Hi guys, welcome to Root Stem, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to get this retro Rogue Trader Ork painted up in a camouflage pattern that's reminiscent of Desert German pattern from World War II. Hi guys, thanks for joining me. If you like my content, then please like, share, subscribe, hit that notification button if you do want to see more. It helps all content creators when you interact with their videos. In this particular video today, we're going to be looking at painting up a Rogue Trader era Ork. Now, if you can see from this particular figure here, this little man, this little gem of a guy, has got a very German-esque look to him, I believe, because of course of the actual banner pole, which, if you look on there, you can see there's an old school Mark VI helmet or beaky. We've even got an old school Imperial Guard helmet as well, kind of like on his little staff. So I've been given this model as a commission to paint. It is for a Blood Axe army, which I think it fits quite well, especially with the simple fact that it is a orc that looks like he's in a uniform. And we're going to be painting him with some more of a classic colours. Now, I am a little bit limited on what colours I can use. As you can see, there's a couple of dead ones I have had to throw away. Some of them being shadow grey and bolt gun metal. Now, a lot of what I am going to use are the old school classic black lid Citadel paints. These came after, especially with these with the flip top. I remember, from what I can remember, originally you got the Citadel paints that just had a label on it with the colour, of course, the pot of the actual paint itself, and then it moved on to a more like a, I'm trying to describe it. It moved more onto the same sort of pot, but with better labelling and different coloured lids. And then eventually these came out. In fact, actually, here we go. And then eventually you got sort of like the cylinder pot went. It was a very straight pot. It went into these pots here, which you can see. This is a very old Ork flesh wash because it even says Ork ORC. And then they kind of went to this style pot. Apologies for the mess. I've had to get a lot of these secondhand, and this was a screw lid, and it was notorious for gumming up, really was. And then they kind of moved on to these flip lids, where you kind of just open up the paint this way. And yes, I'm going to have to try and sort some of this out because it is old. And you know, progressed more onto these type of things and beyond. Now, the colours that I'm going to try and use on this guy, I'm going to try and use some more classics. I have tried to get some colours that are going to complement each other and of course look very, very traditional. The base is still going to be my traditional base. I'm not going to sort of deviate from that because it is a commission for an Ork project that we're doing. And of course it needs to fit the rest of the actual army. But the uniform, because it is going to be a standalone figure, the uniform can be very different. And we're going to go for a classic sort of German desert or desert camo. I'm saying German. I think some of the colour schemes I've looked at are slightly green. So I've gone a little bit further out than that. So we've got some graveyard, old school graveyard earth and some old school desert yellow. And I believe we've got some bleach bone for those that remember it. For highlighting this, we have some old school red gore and blood red. These two, of course, highlighting each other. And we have got 2 pots of goblin green. Just in case one is a little, I managed to pick up these when I was doing my, when I was doing the commission for the, not commission, sorry, when I was doing the Slanesh, when the old school classic noise marine kind of got redone. We've got a little bit of snake bite leather for the pouches. Now I've got, because of course I think I'm going to have to do tradition states that that's going to have to be a blood angel. I've also got some, I think this, I'm not quite sure what type of grey this is, but a lot of the uniforms that were on the old Imperial Guard tended to be a grey. Now I did have a shadow grey, but as you saw earlier, that shadow grey has dried up and it is pretty much completely useless. We've also going to be sort of mixing in some whites. I'm not going to show you the whites in this question because I actually don't have any old school whites, so we are going to have to use some new whites, to be honest with you. And we've got this grey as well, and of course we've got the old school bleach bone to be able to highlight some of the other stuff. We are going to do some washes. Still got some paint left in that. This is an old school orc flesh wash. I'm going to be using that on this orc here, and I might even see if I can find any of my old yellows. I'm not going to do that at the minute, but I'm going to see if I can find some of my old yellows so we can try and highlight some of this skin. I might even, because I do have this, I've got a camo green, which is quite bright. Might try to see if we can get that mixed in. We're going to use some more modern techniques, of course. We're going to use some wet blending, and any blacks and whites that I use, they are going to be black and whites from my original collection. We've also got some mithril silver. I don't have any bolt gun metal, so I'll probably just use this with a shade. And we are still going to be using some of a newer shade, so this is why it's a bit of a hybrid, it's a bit of a question mark. I am going to be using some Null Oil, I am going to be using some Agrax Earthshade, simply because back in the day they didn't really have a lot of these colours and it was a little difficult at times to try and get what you needed done. So let's get out a wet palette because I'm wanting to make sure that this paint is nice and thin, and let's crack on with some of the first stages. So the first colour I'm going to be using is Graveyard Earth. Now you can see this is a very thick boy, very thick boy, so let's just use a little tiny bit of it. Let's get it nice and runny on this palette, and we're always going to do a couple of coats. Even back then, Games Workshop told you to paint more than once. Now we're going to be using the Graveyard Earth for the trousers, so as best as you possibly can. I know this is quite thin, but a couple of coats. I've done a Mechanica Standard Grey undercoat on this. I'll try and get it a little thicker. And the reason I've done a Mechanica Standard Grey is it's going to let all the colours come together a lot better. So paint your trousers. Now with that applied, we are now going to use the old school snakebite leather on his jacket. Again, we're going to be looking at 2 thin coats of this because it is old school. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get a corresponding match from modern paints, but you might be able to if you sort of like use Vallejo or you go for a different sort of manufacturer. They'll probably have something similar to some of the older Games Workshop paints. Keep it nice and thin, keep it flowing, and just keep painting. A little bit of variation on Dory. Okay, so a little bit of snake-like bite leather has also been applied to the pouches. Now, apologies for earlier, I thought that this was an Imperial Guard helmet. It turns out it's actually another old school Space Marine helmet with the visor removed. So this, I'm going to paint this as like a Crimson Fist colour maybe. Unfortunately I don't have any old school blue, so I'm going to have to rely on some of the more modern colours to be able to do that. I believe that this armour is supposed to also be the same as that particular helmet, with a bunch of wires sticking out, which I'll figure out what to do in a bit. I also need to do this wooden staff. The wooden staff really is going to have to be unfortunately it's going to have to be a modern colour. I'm probably going to have to use one of my browns just to be able to give us something separate from the yellowy sort of like deserty colours that we've got currently going through the figure. Right, now I think I'm going to get some silver and red done. Let's have a look at this particular silver. shaking it, shaking it, shaking it, because of course this is old school stuff. Oh, it's a little bit liquid. Don't know if we're going to be able to use that. So swapping out a wet palette for a standard palette, we've got some airbrush thinner here. I'm just going to take the top off, and we're going to use that to thin down our silver. So I'm going to start with the airbrush thinner. A little bit there. Excuse the dirtiness of the palette. So as you can see, this is quite thick and viscous. I'm using thinner instead of normal water because I find that it works better. It works a hell of a lot better with the metallics. Oh, didn't want that bit. Now I'm going to paint the casing of this gun red as well, same as the one of the helmets, the same as the Blood Angel, but I don't want it to paint all of it silver, so just the magazine, and I think this bit here, and then let's get the rest of this bad boy painted up. Blood Angel, well, Blood Angel red. I'm going to use, first I'm going to use the red gore colour for that. Oh, don't forget to paint his chains on here as well. So red gore, this is an old school colour. What we're going to do is to paint up the casing on the weapon. Majority of our weapons tended to be red back in the day. Trying to be as careful as I can not to go over the silver, but you can always tidy up if need be. Coming off my blue tack base there. This is a resin base that the owner of the model has put on there. So I'm painting up the casing of the weapon as best I possibly can. Let's get it all, I mean this is very different to what I normally do. I don't normally get all the base coats on. And I'm also, like I say, I've painted silver into this eye section, and we're going to be painting some blood red. Okay, and as close to blood red as we possibly can on this helmet. So, I did find another brown actually in my set. This is a Citadel Foundation, if anyone remembers this. This is Kimara Vat Brown, and yeah, it's Aki. But with the miracle of the wet palette, I can get it working. Hence why I'm using a wet palette, is just simply because it's I need it to. Yeah, I need it to be able to paint using some of these old paints. So I'm just painting the staff. So the staff that he's got, just painting that up. Zombie flesh in there as well. Now I've got some old school Dark Angel green, and what I'm going to do is to paint the bottle that's in front. And I'm going to paint the sleeve that's on here as well. So this bit, of course, this little glass ball, which will use some more modern techniques to make that look very, very. Use maybe some hard coat, nice bit of gloss varnish. And don't forget, paint that sleeve this green. If you're following at home, if you're not, just watch me at work. Sounds a bit creepy. So we've cracked open a more modern paint. Unfortunately, this is Cantor Blue, and I'm gonna just make a little puddle of this. Yay! And this is going to be for the chest armour. It's also going to be for this particular helmet. Now the grey undercoat is really helping make sure these colours are going to be able to blend properly later. Right, crack on. Okay. We're getting our lovely multicoloured orc done now. We're on to the green, goblin green that is. And we are painting up his flesh. Just be careful not to get it on any of the other parts, but if you're using a wet palette, the majority of the parts should still be available for you to use. Don't forget his knee. And his hands and his jaw and his face. Let's get painting this orc. So now we've got our lovely bright colours everywhere. Bright, 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 bright. We're going to dull them down. And we're going to do this in different stages. So we're going to null oil. Because a black ink wash, man, that used to just annihilate stuff. So the null oil is going to go on anything that's like like his helmet, these little struts here. I'm going to put the null oil on all of the metallic pieces. So don't forget any metallics back here as well. We've got a Draconov Nightshade, that's going to go on the blue. We've got an Agrax Earthshade, which is pretty much going to go on everything. So the red, the camo, the uniform colour. The flesh, I have used a rotten flesh. Sorry, apologies, I actually skipped forward. Completely forgot. I've used a rotten flesh, which I managed to find. There we go. On the hand here. So, of course, we've got a hand that's dangling down. And I've used some just bleach bone on the skull there. There is a skull on his base, but I'll do that later when I come to the actual basing. So, Agrax, null oil, Agrax on his staff as well. And then once you've done all that, put some Agrax maybe on the green. And then once you've done all that, Orc Flesh Wash. Now this is going to be quite dark. It's going to go on the goblin green areas. So we've got our bases on, we've got our washers dried. Now we just need to go back over. I'm going to go back over and kind of reinforce the colours that we've already used. So a little bit of the red as an example in here, a bit of the blue that we've used, a bit of the green, a bit of the Mechanica Standard Grey and the various browns. And I'm just going to pick it up and pick it back out so that of course it looks better. On the staff, I am going to apply another coat of Agrax Earthshade just to make that a little bit darker. But everything else we're just going to go over and we're going to pick it back up and we're going to reinforce those colours. Okay, we've got it reinforced now. It's still drying. But the colour, as you can probably see from that, is definitely coming back into it. Now we're going to start doing some highlights. I'm going to kind of wet blend a little bit of these. So I'm going to start with the blue. So I'm just blending both to start with, getting a nice colour, making sure it's nice and thin, and then we're just going to layer it on. So starting from the bottom and then just going up. Now it will look brighter and then it'll dull off. And then you can give it another kind of coat. Just keep it nice and thin, layer it up. It'll not take long because it won't take long. With it being nice and thin, it won't take long to dry, especially if it's been all the workshop paints, and then you can just come back into it, do like another, you know, 1 or 2 layers, just add a bit more blue each time, and just go, you know, shorter down, and that way you get a nice transition. So I've got his blue nice and highlighted. We are now going to be doing some graveyard earth, and I'm basically going to be doing the same thing for the desert yellow and the snakebite leather. So the graveyard earth, of course, was the trousers, the desert yellow was the top, and the snakebite leather was the little pouches. We've basically got, if you can see here on my wet palette, I've got the graveyard earth, and we get a bit more water. Just gonna a little bit. You see how just a little tiny bit of bleached bone. So if you've not got bleached bone, your shabby bone will work. It's pretty much the same colour. And that's creating our highlight. And again, I need that nice and watery, because we're kind of just going to glaze it on. And like I said, this is for the trousers, so, and then just glaze it on. Now we don't need to do it as much as the armour. Effectively what we are doing is just picking up little bits. We're doing the same technique though, we're just doing the edges, picking up little bits of the highlight. And once we've done this one, we just go back through again, get a little bit more of the shab or bleach, whichever one you're using. Just going to clean my brush, making sure it's nice and flowy, and then just a little tiny bit more of a highlight on the edges. Now, like I say, this should dry. It'll dry darker than what you put it on, so if you look at it and think, oh, that's really bright, just let it dry and then come back to it. What I'm going to do now is get quite a lot of that, with a tiny bit, just so I can darken it off just a little. I'm going to get a really small brush. Now when you're using a small brush, be quick because it will dry real fast because you haven't got a lot of paint. I'm just going to try and touch those edges. And just give it a little tiny bit of an edge highlight. Like I said, just be careful because it will dry quick. Now I've done that, just add your scepter bone to desert yellow and then the snakebite leather and do the same on the other parts. Now we're coming to the grey. Because I didn't have any of the old school greys that would work, we're going for a classic combination of Mechanica Standard and Ministratum. And what would basically, I've already done the grey on this. You can see that there. And we're basically just repeating ourselves. We're just getting a bit of the mech, we're getting a bit of your admin, and we're just putting it nicely. And just highlighting the helmet and any other areas you've deemed to be grey. again, just add a bit more. Get it on there. And then you can just use pure administratum grey as an edge highlight when you come to doing it. Now we've got to the red. We've got some old school blood red, mixing it with the old school red gore. Again, nice and thin. This will be the second layer that I'm doing on it here. I'm trying to get a bit more blood red than I am red gore. Red gore is kind of like the base to this. It's trying to shade it up nice. So that's mainly the weapon, and then of course we've got the helmet. Again, just a bit more red. I'm not doing it too edgy on this one. I'm wanting quite a bit of the red to be prominent. And I'm not wanting it too dark, so I'll probably apply a couple more layers of the old red. And then just highlight with some either pure blood red, or we'll try and find an orange. I'm not sure yet. Right then folks, let's get some orc flesh sorted now. I've got some camo green. It's quite a nice yellowy green. And we've got the old school goblin, of course. We've reinforced, we've mixed, and again, just rinse, repeat. Pick your spots. Don't do everything. It's got a nice yellowy kind of tinge to it, which will give that old school sort of look. Now, when you're doing a face, of course, try and concentrate on just sort of more the extremities, the bits that's going to stick out more. Simply because it's just easier. Of course, this guy's got some bare legs and bare feet. He's got some ankles at the back. And just keep layering this on. It's nice and thin. For some old paint, it's really coming on well. I did have to try and prise it out the bottle though. Make sure not to go overboard too much on certain things, and just get your head down and crack on. Possibly not making weird noises like I am while doing it. Okay, so got some teeth, got some eyes in. I've gone over the silver. This is looking very classic. I've done that little thing on the head. Let's get a base on this. And we're done. I've put a line of varnish on there. I've put a bit of hard coat varnish on the broken glass bottle. And we've got our retro looking orc. It's looking pretty sweet, to be honest. It looks pretty good. I put an enamel varnish on. Always make sure to warm up the cans if you're going to do anything like that. Sometimes I use an airbrush varnish, but I thought I need to stay away from the airbrush for this particular project. So I used an enamel varnish, took a risk. And yeah, it's come out looking really well. Very retro style, very retro looking in my personal opinion, and that's how I like a lot of my figures to look, if I'm completely honest. Well, thank you very much for watching, guys. Please like, share, subscribe, hit that notification button if you do want to see more, and hopefully we'll see you either next week or the week after, or whenever I can get more videos out. See you next time.